USS Cassin was a Fletcher-class destroyer of the U.S. Navy named for Captain Cassin Young, who was awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroism at the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and who was killed in the naval battle of Guadalcanal in the fall of 1942. Cassin Young was launched the 12th of September 1943 by Bethlehem Steel Corp., San Pedro, California, sponsored by Mrs. C. Young and commissioned on the 31st of December 1943. Commander East T. Schreiber in command. After serving in World War II, including the Battle of Leyte Gulf and the Battle of Okinawa, Cassin Young was decommissioned, but was reactivated during the Korean War and continued in active service until 1960. She is preserved today as a memorial ship, berthed at Boston Navy Yard in Massachusetts, across from the old warship USS Constitution. She was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1986 as one of only 4 surviving Fletcher-class destroyers still afloat. Service history. Cassin Young arrived at Pearl Harbor the 19th of March 1944 to complete her training before sailing on to Manus, where she joined the massive fast carrier task force. On the 28th of April, this force sorted for air attacks on Japanese strongholds at Truk Woolley, Satawan, and Ponape, during which Cassin Young operated as a picket ship assigned to warn her group of possible enemy counterattack. She returned to Majuro, and then Pearl Harbor for further training before reporting to Eniwetok on the 11th of June to join the screen of escort carriers assigned to covering duty in the invasion of Saipan 4 days later. In addition to radar picket and screening duty, she was also called upon for inshore fire support. As the battle for Saipan raged ashore, escort carriers of Cassin Young's group launched attacks on the island, as well as sorties to neutralize enemy airfields on Tinian, Rota, and Guam. Similar operations supporting the subsequent assaults on Tinian and Guam claimed the services of Cassin Young until the 13th of August, when she returned to Eniwetok to replenish. Between the 29th of August and the 2nd of October 1944, Cassin Young guarded the carriers of Task Group 38.3 as strikes were flown from their decks to hit targets on Palau, Mindanao, and Luzon in support of the assault on the Palaus, stepping stone to the Philippines. Only 4 days after her return from this mission to Ulithi, Cassin Young sailed on the 6th of October with the same force on duty in the accelerated schedule for the Philippines assault. First on the schedule were airstrikes on Okinawa, Luzon, and Formosa. These led to the furious Formosa air battle of 10 to the 13th of October, during which the Japanese tried to destroy the carrier strength of the imposing TF-38. On the 14th of October, the cruiserino was struck by a kamikaze, which wounded 5 of Cassin Young's men with machine gun fire. Cassin Young aided in shooting down several aircraft in this attack. On the 18th of October 1944, TF-38 took position east of Luzon to launch strikes immobilizing enemy airfields that are in preparation for the assault on Leyte 2 days later. After standing by to render support if called upon during the initial landings, Cassin Young's group began to search for the enemy forces known to be moving toward Leyte Gulf on the 23rd of October, and next day moved in toward San Bernardino Strait, ready to launch strikes. In the most vigorous and successful air attack mounted by the Japanese during the Leyte operation, at 9:38 on the 24th of October, An enemy bomb struck the aircraft carrier Princeton, and Cassin Young rejoined TG-38.3 for the dash northward to attack the Japanese northern force. This developed on the 25th of October into the Battle off Cape Engano, a series of airstrikes in which 4 Japanese carriers and a destroyer were sunk. Cassin Young continued operations in support of the Leyte conquest, as her carriers continued to range widely, striking at enemy bases on Okinawa, Formosa and Luzon. With Ulithi as her base, the destroyer screened carriers through January 1945 as their aircraft pounded away at Formosa, Luzon, Cam Bay, Hong Kong, Canton, and the Nansei Shoto in the support for the assault on Luzon. A brief overhaul at Ulithi prepared her for the operations supporting the invasion of Iwo Jima with airstrikes on Honshu and Okinawa, the bombardment of Paresivela, and screening off Iwo Jima itself during the initial assault on the 19th of February. Another brief respite at Ulithi preceded her deployment for the Okinawa operation, for which she sailed from Ulithi the 22nd of March 1945. After screening heavy ships in the massive pre-invasion bombardment, Cassin Young moved inshore to support the activities of underwater demolition teams preparing the beaches. On invasion day itself, the 1st of April, the destroyer offered fire support in the assault areas, then took up radar picket duty. On the 6th of April, Cassin Young endured her first kamikaze attacks with which the Japanese gambled on defeating the Okinawa operation. Cassin Young rescued the survivors of 2 nearby destroyers that were sunk. On the 12th of April, it was Cassin Young's turn, when a massive wave of kamikazes came in at midday. Her accurate gunfire had aided in shooting down 5 aircraft, but a 6th crashed high up into her foremast, exploding in midair only 50 feet from the ship. Surprisingly, only 1 man was killed. 58 were wounded, many seriously. Cassin Young, although damaged, made Kerry Amaretto under her own power. After repairs there and at Ulithi, she returned to Okinawa on the 31st of May, and resumed radar picket duty. As the kamikaze attacks continued, Cassin Young had respite only during 2 brief convoy escort voyages to the Marianas. On the 28th of July, her group was again a prime target for the Japanese, with 1 destroyer sunk and another badly damaged by kamikazes. During the engagement, Cassin Young assisted in shooting down 2 enemy aircraft, and rescued survivors from the sunken ship. The next day, she was struck for the 2nd time, when a low-flying aircraft hit her starboard side, striking her fire control room. A tremendous explosion amidships was followed by fire, but the crew managed to restore power to 1 engine, get the flames under control, and had the ship underway for the safety of Kerry Amaretto within 20 minutes. 22 men were killed and 45 wounded. For her determined service and gallantry in the Okinawa radar picket line, she was awarded the Navy Unit Commendation. Cassin Young cleared Okinawa the 8th of August and headed home for repairs. Arriving home in San Pedro, California, she was fully repaired, and then decommissioned and placed in reserve in San Diego on the 28th of May 1946. 1951 to 1960 recommissioned the 8th of September 1951. She cleared San Diego on the 4th of January 1952 for her new home port, Newport, Rhode Island. In September 1952 she entered Dry Dock No. 1 in the Boston Navy Yard for the first of 4 major overhauls she would undergo in this shipyard. At this time the ship was updated to its current configuration. 2 Hedgehog anti-submarine launchers and 2 torpedo carriages for the Mark Chapter 32 torpedo were added, with 1 21-inch quintuple torpedo tube mount removed. Also, 4 40mm Bofors twin mounts were replaced by 2 quadruple mounts. The forward pole mast was replaced by a tripod mast to accommodate improved radar and electronics systems. Local operations and refresher training in the Caribbean preceded a period of anti-submarine exercises off Florida from the 7th of May to the 12th of June 1953. Her first tour of duty with the 6th Fleet in the Mediterranean took place from the 16th of September to the 30th of November 1953. After another period of local operations and exercises in the Caribbean Sea early in 1954, she cleared Newport on the 3rd of May for a round-the-world cruise, which included exercises with the 7th Fleet in the Western Pacific, patrols off Korea, and goodwill visits to Far Eastern and Mediterranean ports. She returned to Newport on the 28th of November 1954. Her operations from that time until 1960 included training exercises in the Caribbean and off the eastern seaboard, as well as tours of duty in the Mediterranean in 1956, winter 1956-57 and 1959, and a round of visits to ports of northern Europe in 1958. During that last overseas deployment, an issue was discovered with her rudder that put her into dry dock in France. At that point, the repair costs outweighed retaining the aging ship. On the 6th of February 1960, she arrived at Norfolk Naval Shipyard to be decommissioned. Because of that, the ship was put into long-term storage at the Philadelphia Naval Inactive Ship Maintenance Facility. The 29th of April 1960, 1974, President Cassin Young was struck from the Naval Vessel Register on the 1st of December 1974. The U.S. Navy has permanently loaned Cassin Young to the National Park Service to be preserved as a floating memorial ship berthed at the Boston Navy Yard, part of the Boston National Historical Park in Boston, Massachusetts. Across from Constitution, she arrived on the 15th of June 1978 and was opened to the public in 1981. The ship is maintained and operated by the National Park Service and Cassin Young, the volunteers. She was listed on the National Register of Historic Places and designated a National Historic Landmark in 1986, as a well-preserved example of the Fletcher-class destroyer, the most numerous class of destroyer produced by the United States during World War II. In late July 2010, Cassin Young closed to the public in preparation for dry docking. On the 9th of August 2010, she was moved into historic dry dock number 1 in BNHP for the first time in 30 years for some much-needed repairs to her hull. On the 4th of September 2012, the ship was closed to the public to allow contractors to make final repairs to the hull. She returned to her position at Pier 1 on the 14th of May 2013. On the 4th of June 2013, she was moved to the Boston Harbor Shipyard and Marina in East Boston while repairs were made to her berth in Charlestown. By September 2013, she had returned to her museum berth. 3 other Fletcher-class ships are preserved as memorials: Us the Sullivans at Buffalo, New York; Us Kidd at Baton Rouge, Louisiana; Greek destroyer Velos, a former Us Chariot at Athens, Greece. Awards: Navy Unit Commendation, Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 7 battle stars, World War II Victory Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Korean Service Medal, Philippine Presidential Unit Citation, Korean Presidential Unit Citation, Philippine Liberation Medal, United Nations Service Medal. Gallery.